Welcome to the show. Watch UAP Troop 33. I'm John. I'm your host. Glad you guys can join me today, man. How's everybody doing? Well, so today I got a good show for you, man. And I'm going to break this down a little bit. I really want to dig into the nature of reality, how this relates to UFOs. And not only that, but the things that Matthew Brown said, some of the cryptic things that he said. One of them was that we live in this carefully crafted reality, this carefully constructed reality. And that it's basically an illusion that we've been left behind, that the normies have been left behind. And I think this is important. I think we need to dig into it. So please stick with me. I'll be right back. It's going to be a hell of a show.
What I have learned is that we live in a dream, a carefully constructed reality. We make use of a science that is tightly controlled and suppressed and distorted. I think we are left behind.
Humans.
I think normies, the normal humans, the people have been left behind. Us.
Mm-hmm.
People need to understand that we might have freedom of speech, but that has been subverted. We do not have freedom of inquiry. We are blocked from learning what we need to know. Just in the public world, we are blocked from advancing in science. We are taught false science intentionally to prevent us from learning more.
So in the interview with Weaponized, Matthew Brown, after he explains Immaculate Constellation, he explains the struggles he had to get this before Congress, to actually whistleblow the obstacles and the kind of blocking that these unelected officials were doing to try to keep him from getting his story to Congress. And then he gets into this carefully constructed reality that he speaks of, and I think I understand what he means. And not only the fact that I did an episode not too long ago about how we're stuck in this 3D dimensional reality with a linear time, moving forward only, and that we're kind of trapped in these flesh and blood bodies, and that our five senses are like a filter that kind of constrict our ability to interface with the greater reality around us. And then I kind of speculated and theorized that this greater reality surrounding us could possibly be way more vast than we know. And that these UFOs, these UAPs could be possibly higher beings from a higher vibrational dimensional reality, that are kind of dipping in here, checking on us. And that maybe when we were detonating these huge atomic weapons in the desert, I believe we did over like 1,500 tests or more. I think I'm really giving that a very conservative estimate. I haven't looked it up, but I know we did a lot of tests with some very, very big weapons. And that we don't really understand the nature of these weapons. And I think that Oppenheimer, that speech that he gave afterwards, where he talked about I become death, and he quotes Vishnu out of the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna, takes on Vishnu's persona and, pretty much speaks to Arjuna, and he says these things, right? It kind of makes you wonder what Oppenheimer was talking about. Was he talking about just the fact that he made this weapon of, mass destruction, or was he talking about something deeper? Did we tear into possibly the veil that separates our reality from others? Because that's when really the uptick in UFO sightings began. After that, right? You had the UFO flap 1952 over Washington, D.C. And you have some people who actually theorize that this was, you know, from some type of German breakaway civilization in Antarctica, which I find to be totally baseless and more far-fetched than any other theory. Could these huge bursts of energy possibly did something to some other reality that kind of exists with us, but not really with us, because we can't experience it because of the limitations over our five senses? The very thin beam of the light spectrum that we can visually see, the very thin sound frequencies that we can actually hear, right? It's like when you blow the dog whistle, we can't hear it, but the dog can. Makes you wonder, are dogs able to see things we can't, Cats. Sometimes I feel that I've seen pets in the past that appear like they're interacting with something that I can't see. And some people, especially like scientists, mainstream, they'll laugh at this, right? Because they think they figured it all out. They think that we figured everything out. They think there's nothing under the sun that we haven't figured out. And isn't that the same exact state of minds that people in the deep past had whenever, uh, you know, individuals like Copernicus and, you know, other people. I can't remember the guy who figured out that we weren't the center of the universe. These people almost got burned at the stake, right? And it kind of reminds you of like what Diana Pasulka said in the Sean Ryan interview, where she was speaking about Plato's cave. For those of you that ain't familiar with the story of Plato's cave, the story of Plato's cave is that you know it's kind of an allegory for society, right? So there's these people and they're chained inside this cave, and the only thing that they were ever able to see is these images on a wall in front of them, and there's shadows, and there's these puppet masters behind them that are putting these shadows onto the wall, and these people, their whole experience is seeing what the reflections of these shadows on the wall. So they had no concept of reality. But then one of them escapes the cave and he gets out and the light almost blinds him, hurts his eyes. But then when he finally allows his eyes to adjust to the light and he's able to see the world around him, he's like amazed. He can't believe that there's all this that he was unable to perceive. So he wants to go back into the cave and tell all his friends that are still in the cave, that are still deluded, that are still under this illusion, this carefully constructed reality. But before he gets there, I believe it was Socrates says, "Don't go back in that cave." You know, probably shouldn't say that on YouTube, but they'll take you out, and they will. And you look at like the story of Jesus Christ. You know, they took him out, and then I believe they hijacked his message, changed it to the point where today I don't even think we know for sure what exactly his message was. So I want you to think about that and then think about our existence, right? So here we are. Not only are we trapped into this materiality, this linear time, this three-dimensional construct, but I want you to think about the puppet masters. Who would be the people shining the shadows on the cave wall if we were in that story, right? If our existence was a parallel, an allegory to the story of the Plato's cave, who would be those puppet masters? Who would be those controllers? And how do they do it? And that's a little bit what this show is going to be about today. I think it's obvious, right? We got fiat money, right? We got this money that's really not backed by anything. You got these banks that can create more money out of thin air just by loaning that money out. Because when they loan that money out, you would think that it would take away from their coffers, but it actually doesn't. It just creates new money out of thin air. And then they charge you interest on that money. And if you think I'm wrong, just look up modern money mechanics and read that document. Or just ask a banker, ask an economist or economist, excuse me. They'll tell you. So then it causes inflation, which devalues the dollar. Meanwhile, you're working for the same wage that you've worked for, how many years, getting these little increment raises. Meanwhile, inflation is just going out of control. So you're working more for less money. While they just print money like it's nothing, the banks just create more money like it's nothing with loans, and then they charge you interest on it. And it's a control mechanism. It keeps us chasing this fiat money, this fake money. But how else do the puppet masters keep control? What other shapes are they reflecting off the cave wall that we think is reality? If you really think about it, it's not hard. You'll come to the conclusions. You'll start to see through it. Education, right? Just think about, especially if you're my age, just think about the subjects from when you were a child, things that they taught you, right? About pilgrims, pilgrims, Indians, and this peaceful exploration. Christopher Columbus, we celebrated Columbus Day, and then as we grew older, and the books like A People's History of the United States came out by Howard Zinn, we started to learn that things were very, very vicious back then. We started to learn about Cortez and the Incas, and the atrocities they committed for gold just to send back to Spain. The land grabs, the fictional contracts that they would make with some peon in a tribe, get him to sign his name, and then take the entire tribe's land. Meanwhile, the guy didn't even know what he was signing. They didn't even understand the concept of owning land. To them, they were like, how can you own the land? How can you own the earth? It was a totally foreign idea to them. So our education system, it's a form of this carefully constructed reality, this fiction, these shapes that are being reflected off the cave wall. But what else? We can go further, right? Religion. It's another one. If you sin, God's going to punish you. He's going to damn you to hell for eternity, to burn in the flames, gnashing of teeth because he loves you so much, right? It's another one. Control mechanism, right? Keeps us controlled, keeps us behaving. And it goes further. We can keep going with this. I can go all day. There's so many examples. That the things that Matthew Brown said, I believe this is what he's speaking of, right? And I really thought I contemplated this for a long time. And then the answers just started coming to me and just started making sense, this whole thing, right? So why would the government not want to disclose the UFO presence? Why would they not want to disclose that there's these higher beings that are above us on the food chain? Well, one would be because they can't protect us, right? Not that they need to, but they can't. And then we would start feeling that we could appeal to these higher intelligences, possibly taking control away from the powers that be, the bankers, the unelected government officials who pretty much make up the deep state, right? And you know what they would label me just for saying these things, right? We already know conspiracy theorists, right? This derogatory term. Somehow they made this a derogatory term so that anybody that questions the status quo, or questions the powers that be, or questions the fictional reality that we've been fed all our life. Well, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're dangerous, right? Yes. Yes, I am. And they'll come after you. They will. Luckily, I'm such a small channel that they don't even know I exist yet. It's a shame. Um, and it brings me even further to this. And listen, like when I researched this Tartaria idea, now I'm not fully on board with everything they say, but I could definitely conceive of a entire culture, society, nation being erased from history. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been done before, and you can't. It's not even. It's so bad that if you even speak on it, you got a chance of being ostracized. You can't even name this certain group on YouTube, or else they'll blow up the whole episode. Just naming this political organization from World War II, they'll nuke you, right? Now, I'm not saying that these people were great. They were just as bad as any other government, any other power hungry bureaucracy, like Stalinist Russia. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's interesting how they demonized that group so much, and yet Operation Paperclip, we brought those scientists here. We brought Warner von Braun here when Warner von Braun was known, you know, as a very bad individual, and Russia did it too. You know, so it's important that these narratives are only you know you have to abide by them, but they don't have to. You know, so it's a very interesting subject, and I implore you guys to keep on pulling this thread. And if you do, you'll see even more and more and more examples of these fictions that make up the reality, these control mechanisms that make up our reality. It's like Law and Order, that whole idea of law and order, right? But when you see these super rich people get into these binds, all of a sudden it just disappears. They don't have to go to jail. They don't have to make bail. They don't have to do none of that, right? They're special. So it's not equal justice, not at all. And I just hope that we can continue to wake up as a society, you know. And of course, that they'll make things derogatory terms like truthers. Remember that? Truthers? Those are people that were seeking the truth about 9/11, right? Well, they managed to call them truthers. That was now derogatory. More examples of the puppet masters reflected shadows off the cave, right? So when are we going to wake up? I think it's time. Don't you? Let's not forget the media. We all know about the media, the things that they've done, the the lies they've told, right? The narratives they've spun, and it got so bad that it became painfully apparent. I guess around what 2016, 2017. I guess like around the time of the 2016 presidential election, and further as we went on, it just got worse and worse and worse. And it didn't matter whose side you were on, you saw it, right? You saw the lies, you saw the fiction, to the point now where we don't believe anything any of them say. Especially 2020 with that whole fiasco that happened, with the health scare, right? Can't even say that word to this day. So obvious, man. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. If you like this episode, please hit the like and subscribe, comment, share it to a friend, share it to two friends. I'll be back tomorrow. Peace.